Huduma Namba registration is voluntary and a voluntary exercise in compliance with the ruling of the court. There is no directive from government to institute any punitive measures against those who don't register. More emphasis will be laid on
civic education.
Civic is missing there, but civic
That was the first one, the first reaction. And by then, already Huduma Namba was trending on social media. Then shortly after that, the next one came, which was a statement from the PS from Ministry of ICT. Sure. And that was also a statement. After that, now came this one from Wangusi's office. And there it is, he was misquoted. Yep. That was what was said by his
Actually, he blamed the media, which is, typically of what they do. And then he later, at the end says, they will not be switching off these lines, when it was very clear that that was what he had said in the beginning. But then he is not the only one to make a contradictory statement. You remember the PS and Immigration, Gordon Kihalangwa, said the same thing last week.
About passports.
About passports.
Yes.
But then again, the issue of how you deal with your citizens with threats, there's something about that is just interesting around the Huduma.
Could it be that all these people are under some kind of pressure, Linus? I mean, it is shocking that there would be statements of this sort coming out from not junior officers, but people who are fairly senior in government, and then the very government comes and says, well, you know what, this is really not the government position.
Let me say this, Joe. Wangusi's statement is appropriate, only that it is 30 years late. If he spoke in 1989, this is how things are done. This is how they were done. Back in 1989, there was a ruling party called KANU. And what used to happen is when you go to the market, and let me talk of the place I come from. These are things we saw as children. There was a river. The chiefs will wait for everybody who is going to the market. If you're going to sell goats, if you're going to sell cows, you have to have that KANU stamp.
Yes, I remember that.
Either 5 shillings
10 shillings
or 10 shillings.
Yes.
And this was not a choice.
Yeah. It was the stamp which had the red jogo.
Yes, red jogo. You have to stamp it. And nobody told the chiefs to do that.
And you'd never get government service anywhere, by the way. Even if you didn't have a form to be filled.
Yes.
You flash it first.
So Wangusi is being who he's been. It's on a transition. He's yet to transition into the current environment, where you can't do what he was trying to do. But he has tried it and done it before with accolades. He was hailed. This is the gentleman who switched off the media not too long ago. February 2018.
Yes.
And he did it gleefully. We sat in a meeting at the Hilton, at the Editors Guild, for a breakfast where the CA came and told us about 8 days to the election in 2017 that anyone who is going to transmit results that are not from the IEBC will be switched off. Yeah. This is the language of Wangusi. And we need to understand who Wangusi is. Quite a gentleman, personable if you meet him. A long-serving civil servant. A person who has done a lot of these things. When the media was still 2 broadcasters, and then 3, Citizen, Ambank House. What is the story of Wangusi? Yeah. He was in Ambank House carrying those things out of the building. He is actually the switcher in chief, if I can give him a new name. He can switch off those SIM cards if he's instructed to do that.
But the only problem is...
Why is he saying it at a time when the government doesn't want it said? It looks like in times past he has acted in complete accord with what the government seemed to want at the time.
But just a quick one, Joe, on that, the script needs to be shared properly within government circles. They need to tell the heads of department, they need to tell the county commanders that this is the script. On Huduma, this is the approach we are taking. Because if you don't tell them, they'll do it their way.
Default position.
They'll threaten. Some will use.
Joe, there's a problem with attempting to recall an arrow that you have already shot.
Yeah, or trying to pick to rudisha glass.
When a glass is broken, there's a problem when you try to mend it. You will struggle. You will use all manner of efforts, including statements like we have seen, but it's already gone. Yeah, out there, people are already feeling, maybe Wangusi has spoken the truth and has spoken
just
what,
a matter of time.
has spoken what is being said within the government circles, that if guys don't register for these things, wataona. Once again, Huduma Namba may be a very good idea. You know, this whole idea of trying to centralize our data, make it easy to access services and so on and so forth, it's a very good thing. But the problem is how it is being communicated. It raises suspicion. Kwa nini tuna sound kama tunalazimishwa? Is there anything behind it? What is behind it?
Right.
And the moment you coerce people, it generates rebellion.
Yeah.
So what wanasema, okay, wacha tuone.
Yeah.
Let him switch us off. Somebody sent me an SMS and was asking me, so he's saying he's going to switch off our SIM cards. Kwani it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
Okay, then they can as well switch off air.
And the anger that
Oxygen.
is on social media about this,
Yeah.
because of that, what you said, Nikatu Nalazimishwa, it's being forced down people's throats. And then when you see this, it trended like almost literally, because before that, the previous hashtag that was trending was Kenya's cabinet of thieves.
Yes.
People are angry with the cabinet. And it's the way it's been for the past few days. The trending hashtags are usually issues that Kenyans are angry about and they're complaining about and they're unhappy. If you look at the top tweets, the top 4 or 5 tweets in Kenya are all things about people wanalalamika kuhusu serikali. In fact, there's one guy who said, wale ambao hamkupigia kura serikali, kwani hamkutuambia mlikuwa mnajua nini wakati huo that we didn't know that we are finding out now.
I find the threats both from Kihalangwa and Wangusi interesting at a time when the other arm of government is sort of speaking of the registration process so far as success.
Exactly.
We are being told about 10 million people now, so it just looks like it's going really well, but on the other hand, there are threats. So you start to imagine...
Are you sure it is even 10 million?
Well, those are the questions you would start to ask.
At least they seem to be on a roll. I mean, they have opposition leaders on billboards and all manner of things. I mean, it's
10 million.
Influencers.
So there is an Ipsos.
So if you have 10 million, why then would you need the threats?
There's an Ipsos survey that was just released.
But I thought that if this is actually how I think about what ought to have happened. For example, if Wangusi went off script, because that's a very serious gaffe. Yes. It is not the sort of thing that you would say, oh yeah, misquoted, oh no, that's not the government position. It is the sort of thing where you will say as a result, because this guy has given the wrong impression about the government position on a very important policy, what are you going to do about him? Is he going to just stay there, or are you telling us this is the action we have taken, however administratively or whatever, because this is someone who is misleading the nation about what the government position is on such an important thing? Because the confusion that has been created by this is really going to take a long time to undo, in my view.
There was a statement that I'd wanted us to put on here, and it's from the Principal Secretary of the Ministry of Information,
Jerome
Muchenga, because this is the ministry that has been tasked with implementing the Huduma project.
Wangusi's ministry, actually.
That is.
Yeah.
And he says the Ministry of Information, Communications and Technology wishes to clarify that the government is not planning to switch off mobile phone subscribers who are not Huduma Namba compliant. We wish to reiterate that Huduma Namba registration is a voluntary exercise in compliance with the recent High Court ruling. There is absolutely no directive from the government to institute any punitive measures against those who don't register. And it goes on and on about it. And it brings me to the whole issue of kama watu wamejisajili. Though you mentioned it, and there is a survey that has just been released this evening by Ipsos. I think they conducted in about 9 counties, if I'm not mistaken. One of the questions people were asked was about the Huduma Namba. And a huge percentage, over 90% in all the 7 or 8 counties that were sampled, actually they did it in terms of provinces, the 4 provinces, Nairobi, Western, Eastern, Central, Nyanza, over 90% of people were aware about it. But how many had registered? The numbers were less. And the reasons given by many was like, oh, I'm too busy, there are too many long queues from there, or some were asking whether they were asked if they know about the deadline for when the Huduma Namba registration exercise was ending. A lot of them said they knew. They were asked if they knew what documents were required. Most of them said IDs and all that. But what surprised me is the fact that we were talking about, was it well communicated? Do people know about it? A huge percentage, 96, 95 across all those 8 provinces say they are aware about Huduma Namba.
But is there a reason why there's a deadline, by the way?
Yeah, they keep saying itaendelea throughout. I've heard it being said.
Yeah, but I guess it's to collate all the numbers, put that together, and then, because there's people who are outside the country. But the point of civic education, and this is a failing not just of this process, but remember even things like IEBC and the voting period, when they have all of this time to actually do civic education, but they start to do it at the time when there's all this noise from politicians, when nobody is listening to them. you cannot overemphasize the fact that you want to have all of these things, barazas, you know, even in your estates where you are, that you hear that big, loud, blaring blowhorn that comes in and says, Huduma Namba, and they're at markets. How many of those have you seen at markets, at dispensaries, at hospitals, at shopping centers, with people just there trying to explain very simply what Huduma Namba is? The process of civic education for this cannot be overemphasized. Even in churches, yes,
even like in Mpaka, a lot of people don't know the nearest point of registering for Huduma Namba. They had no idea. In fact, during sometime this week, I think on Wednesday or on Thursday, on Tuesday, we discussed the Huduma Namba issue here on Semana Citizen, and we requested the ministry, and they were kind enough to send some of their clerks here to register our staff, and the number of people who came to register was staggering. And most of them were saying, ata tujui tunafaa kwenda kuregister wapi. Thank you for bringing them here. So something as basic as knowing the nearest point you're supposed to register, people don't know. Yeah.
Wow.
Just before we move to the next topic, because I guess we are, I think it's a day of two own goals by Francis Wangusi. Looking at the press statement that the CA released this evening, this again is another classic example of how not to communicate during a crisis. In the age of video recordings, forget about media. These days we have mobile phones. There is a video recording next to you anytime. You can't start saying you've been quoted out of context. You see, that's an old thing that was done when print media was the main thing. People
so maybe he should have said he was speaking in jest, just to make sure that people
yes, because you can't start.
That probably would have flown,
no,
but you
John,
know,
perhaps.
I didn't say. You know.
His argument was, and at the end of his statement, he said, "Do you know the number of people who are using ID cards for people who've passed away to acquire SIM cards?"
Good thing communicated wrongly. In fact, I find it as a misnomer that this is the communication authority of Kenya
that has a communication problem.
This should be the epitome of communication.
And let's talk about...
This is where communication lies.
Yes.
In fact, a guy called Bing Charlie on Twitter is saying, Wangusi's missed call on Huduma Namba was, quote, John the Baptist move, a precursor to what is yet to come.